It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
These banks who actually really want to lend you money to buy a house because it's very profitable for them to give you that debt, they are also enabling your spending habits that could actually stop you from buying a home. We are seeing a growing number of Australians rely on credit cards to help them make ends meet.
That is Sarah Megginson on the Real Estate Breakfast this morning as we launch into another episode with more property information coming your way, connecting you to over 1,450 real estate episodes. And if you're a new listener, wow, there is plenty of local information there to take a big, deep dive into. How do we get back into another Friday, eh? This week has just rapidly gone by. New data from Domain's Matching Demand Report is out, which compares millions of property searches with actual listings across capital cities. Detached houses near city centres are now priced hundreds of thousands of dollars above what buyers can afford. Canberra's inner ring, that tops the list, with listings averaging $712,000 more than buyer budgets, while Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane show gaps of over $300,000. Townhouses, now they are emerging as the new middle ground, particularly in Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth, where buyer demand often exceeds listing prices. Units remain the most aligned with what Australians are actually searching for, and that is probably likely to grow unavoidably in the coming years. So right now, let's take you to Sydney and catch up with Sarah Megginson from Finder. And a very good morning to you, Sarah. Welcome back into the Real Estate Breakfast. Aussies are cutting back to buy a home. Nearly 4 million Aussies have dramatically cut their spending and personal debt in the last 5 years in order to boost their borrowing power. That is according to a new report from you guys.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think it's no surprise to anyone that affording a home or buying a home has become really difficult for first home buyers, more difficult than it's ever been before. We're seeing people really make a lot of personal sacrifices to try and keep that dream alive. So they're really scrutinising their budgets, looking at what they're spending, everything from their everyday purchases to their household bills, digital descriptions, buying lunch, all of those things have all become under the microscope. And it's really important because they may seem like small things, but they actually can be the difference between your loan being approved or you getting rejected, because banks are looking at that kind of granular detail now. They want to see what your spending habits are like. They want to make sure that you're a really responsible borrower when they're handing you these loans for very big amounts of money. So it actually does really work in your favor, as well as boosting your deposit. It's going to set you up for the best possible chance of a loan approval as well.
Yeah, we were talking about how expensive coffee about a month ago, and I raised the point there are some prices out there, $8.50 for a cup of coffee. And I said back then, you know, if you were doing a coffee run and a shout for the office, I mean, forget that. That's going to set you back plenty.
Absolutely. I mean, and some people are in a habit. I'm not a coffee drinker, but my husband is. And we've cut his habit back to 1 coffee a day, because 2 coffees a day at $6 to $7, or in some cases $8, you're looking at thousands of dollars a year. It could total $3,000 to $4,000, if not more. And if coffee is a really high value for you and you can't get through your day without it, then you should go for it. But if you have a really big financial goal like owning a home, you might find that sacrificing your coffee is actually worth it to help you make a bit more progress on your goals.
Got to ask you, in terms of the survey that you did with all of the people making these sacrifices, what was the sort of the commonality of a couple of them that was a through line that you could share with us that everybody's kind of doing and was easy to cut back on?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to see the overall trends. It's obviously different depending on where you live. If you're in a regional area, you don't have as much option or as much opportunity to shop around the same way that people in capital cities do. But we're really seeing people look at their household spending and their daily habits. And I think there are some really easy wins there when it comes to cooking and groceries. Even the most basic things like butter and cheese are now very expensive. You know, I've seen butter for $10 and the cheese I buy, which is just regular cheese, can be $15 now. So looking at those opportunities to be really strategic with your spending on supermarkets and takeaways can be a huge opportunity to save. I was actually just speaking to someone last month. We were talking about their goals. They wanted to buy a house. They actually earned a really good income and they had a decent deposit, but they weren't making enough progress. And when we looked at their spending, they worked out they were spending about $400 a week on Uber for dinner, Uber Eats for dinner, and on coffees and buying their lunch. And they just weren't really cooking much. They were lucky to be cooking once or twice a week. You could almost halve that spending. It was for two people, and that's another $10,000 a year that's going towards your house deposit. So there's some easy wins there when you look at your lifestyle spending.
That's the neighbour you want to be invited for dinner by the sound of it. All right, let's have a look at the latest data on the fact that more than 1 in 3 Aussies no longer believe they'll ever afford a home. Many people are putting major life plans on hold, delaying having children, upgrading cars or taking holidays, etc. That list is probably quite extensive, but it's a little bit sad, I feel, that, 1 in 3 Aussies don't believe that they'll be able to get into a home ever.
I agree. I think it's a real sign of the times that it's now not even something that people are delaying. It's just something that for a lot of Australians, they've come to the realization and that buying a home is just probably not in their future. And I think it ties into that previous data we were talking about, that people are looking really hard at their situation and their future, and they're trying to shift their habits to try and make it more of a reality. We've obviously seen the government really try to push their first home buyer policies, and they've made some changes to try and make it more affordable and easier for first home buyers to get in with a smaller deposit. But for a lot of people, for 1 in 3 Australians, they just don't think that that's ever going to be on the cards for them. The thing that's happening in families and inheritance at the same time, where we're expecting over the next 2 decades for $3.5 trillion in generational wealth to be passed down. And that could have an impact too. I think we're seeing for a lot of people that they're seeing their only pathway to home ownership is going to be if they inherit one, or they inherit the money to be able to buy one from a loved one that passes away. So it's a really huge structural change in how generational wealth has shifted and how home buying trends have shifted over the last few decades.
And we are talking to Sarah from Finder this morning. When we come back, we'll take a look at the credit card trap if you are trying to save that deposit, and also the rising debt and financial stress. We'll do that after this.
Every morning from 6 a.m, we bring you the latest real estate news with diverse perspectives from leading industry experts. We deliver the most property podcasts across Australia every week. Unlock the secrets of real estate and stay informed about the latest real estate buzz with hot market trends, emerging suburbs and hidden gems.
And it's a Real Estate Friday, working into another weekend once we get through today. With us is Sarah. She is from Finder. They've got a report out. One of the aspects is that it says that half of all Australians now carry credit card debt, a 9% increase from last year. And ironically, those same banks, you say, are offering home loans that are often the ones issuing those cards. It's a bit of a cycle, isn't it?
That is such a good point that I have never actually put that together before. But yes, these banks who actually really want to lend you money to buy a house because it's very profitable for them to give you that debt, they are also enabling your spending habits that could actually stop you from buying a home. So I hadn't really put those two together yet, but we are seeing a growing number of Australians rely on credit cards to help them make ends meet. And we're seeing a lot of overspending as well. And we've actually reached a record high. So spending on credit cards, in terms of that interest-bearing debt, which is debt that you're not paying off the interest in full each month, that has actually increased over $500 million just last month alone. And it has increased to a record high of over $18 billion a year. And that's up a full $1 billion on last year. So we're seeing a really big increase in the number of people who are leaning on credit cards just to help them pay their bills. And we're also seeing an increase in how many people are taking cash advances out of their credit card. And that's when you pop your card into an ATM and actually withdraw cash from it. That is really one of the big trends that is driving this increase, because once you cash advance money, you pay interest on it from that day onwards. Credit cards obviously have the highest interest rates of any debts. They're often over 20%.
Yeah, so that is the credit card piece. You mentioned financial stress. Your survey also found that 26% of Australians have buy now, pay later debt. I absolutely hate this concept. People got totally done like a dinner when it came to buy now, pay later. Now, this is up 8% from last year, with millennials the most likely to use it. Gen Xers, they're carrying the most credit card debt, and car, personal and education loans are all on the rise as well. So this is a really grey area for a lot of people when they start loading everything up.
Absolutely. And we can really see this trend here that Australians are increasingly relying on debt. It's not the get out of jail, I wouldn't say free, but it's not the get out of jail option or the last case option anymore. A lot of people are using buy now, pay later to pay for everyday items. And I must say, the one area I really don't like seeing buy now, pay later is with takeaways and restaurants. I think if you can't afford to pay for the food you're about to eat, then you shouldn't probably be eating there. Maybe it's a sign that you should be buying something a bit more affordable and you're possibly living beyond your means, because using buy now, pay later for a meal, you're still paying for 6 weeks later for a burger you ate many, many weeks ago. And then you have the potential to get fees and charges for this thing in your past that you no longer value. I think it encourages very mindless spending. I really don't like to see that. Just recently this year, we saw Afterpay partner with Uber Eats to make it easier for people to charge their Uber Eats to their Afterpay account. And I think that's a step in the wrong direction. I'd much prefer to see us add a bit more friction to spending. And I think that's one of the reasons why we see such an increase in debts and overspending, because we've really taken a lot of friction out of spending now. We can spend money we don't have on things we don't need very easily. That's a really different proposition to when I was saving to buy a home 20 years ago, when things like buy now, pay later didn't exist. Getting a credit card was relatively difficult. You lay-byed things if you didn't have the money. So you had that delayed gratification. And now we've flipped it. We don't have delayed gratification. You get the item first and then you pay it off. And it's a really seismic change to the way that Australians interact with debt.
I am with you 100%. So don't buy burgers and put it on buy now, pay later. That's not a good idea, not a healthy idea for your bank balance. Hey, Sarah, great to catch up with some of those findings in the Finder survey. Enjoy your Friday and the upcoming weekend, and thanks for coming back on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
What I'm kind of talking about is the middle ring, and the CBD is the one that home ownership is going to be a thing of the past, because it's actually most of the areas that you're looking at is 20 times the average income. And that's one of the macro drivers investors look at as well, is affordability. If the locals can't afford it, who's buying it?
This is the key for me. Now, it's not just the wealthy, it's the everyday investors. They're the ones that are snapping up multiple homes for rental returns. And of course, that is just fueling everything.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So like most of my investors and my friends even, they can't afford Sydney where we live. Like it's actually unaffordable. Like if you're buying middle ring, you're talking $2.5 million plus for people that earn $150,000, $200,000. So that's more than 10 times their income. So they don't have any other choice but to do the rent vesting model or move to a regional area. And most of them, to earn that 150K plus, they need to be in the capital city, Sydney, because they have to go in the office 1, 2, 3 days a week.
We can connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.